Hello, this is Dr. Anthony Delmond. We've been talking about the sales presentation, and in particular, we were talking about the sales strategy you set up as a salesperson before you go in, the way you're going to deal with a customer. The next thing we want to do is actually discuss the presentation method that you'll use. There are a lot of different sales presentation methods, but we're going to spend some time talking about four. And these are going to be broken up along the lines of how structured they are and how much control the seller has over the conversation. So memorized presentations or canned presentations are highly structured. And then we get to the other side where we have problem solution and need satisfaction presentations that are unstructured. The buyer controls the majority of the conversation in a problem solution or need satisfaction presentation, whereas the seller controls much in a memorized and even a formula presentation. Let's go through each of these in turn. A memorized sales presentation is just that. It's memorized. The salesperson can script it all out, deliver it the same way to every customer, and it's very easy and cheap to set up. It's very structured, it's inflexible, it doesn't take into account individual buyers' needs because it's already scripted in advance. This works best when you have new customers and they're buying simple and cheap products. You wouldn't want to use this for a complex product or something that needs to be customized. This is for quick sales calls when there's no need for customer input. So simple products, customers may already have an idea how to use it. You're just giving them an option to use your product as opposed to a competitor's. This works for customers who are thinkers and judgers. Those personality types or traits work really well with a very simple process because they're able to make good decisions for themselves. They don't need all the feedback from that give and take. So I have a script here, and I typically will walk through it, but I'll let you read this on your own. The things to notice about a memorized sales presentation in this example are that the salesperson is really controlling the conversation. Even though there seems to be a back and forth, the salesperson already has a script in mind, and whenever the buyer objects or has a question, the salesperson just goes right back to the script. Again, this might not be the best thing to use for complex or expensive products, but it can work really well if you have simple and cheap products. So the advantages of using a memorized sales presentation is that the salesperson controls the presentation itself. If you want to make sure that you have the reins, then this might be good for you. It's really good for new salespeople because it lets them get to know the product very well. They're able to develop a script and stick to it. And it's cheap and easy to repeat. You can teach salespeople this very easily, and for a cheap product, it can be very useful. You're going on a law of large numbers to sell. But there are some disadvantages. One, there's no flexibility for customer feedback. There's no ability to adapt the sales presentation to what the customer is feeling. There's not a lot of detail beyond what you choose to talk about in the beginning, and a repeated script can get pretty stale. If you're meeting with people more than once, you certainly wouldn't want to use this because they've seen this presentation before. If we want to add a little more structure, we can go to the formula sales presentation or a persuasive selling presentation. This is, again, less rigid. It gives a general outline and you can modify it as you go. So there's some adaptability, some flexibility here that you didn't have with the memorized presentation. This works best when you have, again, a pretty non-complex product and somebody's making a routine or a limited decision-making process. They're having to make a decision that doesn't require a lot of processing, a lot of mental strain. Moderately inexpensive products with not a lot of risk for making the wrong choice. This is the best sales presentation method for repeat buyers. You can change the presentation a little bit, but you don't have to figure out what the buyer wants from scratch because you already know them. And this works best for customers who are sensors. And this sensor personality trait is really common in the agricultural world, as we saw before. I could walk through this script, but again, I think you could probably understand it pretty well on your own. The main things to notice are that this is back and forth. So the salesperson asks a question, maybe a trial close we'll get to, and the buyer responds, and there's a give and take and some adaptation of the content. Some advantages of a formula sales presentation where you have the skeleton built and you just change as you go. Well, it's more engaging. Customers are able to provide feedback and get their questions answered. When you're doing all the talking as the salesperson, it's very hard to gain that attention and interest that you need to get past into the desire stage. When you are engaging with a customer, they're paying attention, they're focused, and they're able to really get to know your product and you. So it's definitely an improvement if you can do this. Again, if you're selling really, really simple products, you might not need this. But if you're selling something that takes a little bit more thought, or you're trying to get somebody to switch to your product, this is probably a better option. It's very customizable to the situation. Disadvantages, there's still some limitations on flexibility. You couldn't use this for a really complex product or a risky product, and you wouldn't want to do this for something that needs to be customized to the individual, because you're not going to get that much feedback from the customer. You're not going to be able to make the changes that you would need to do. It's not uniform for all salespeople. It's going to require more than just memorizing the pitch, so it's worthwhile to use this when you've already started to develop your product knowledge outside of the script. A much more flexible presentation method is the need satisfaction presentation. This is where you're going to have direct interaction with the customer, and you're going to incorporate their feedback directly in the presentation itself. There's 3 phases. There's need development. That is where you determine what the customer's situation is and what needs may exist for their product. Then you want to help them become aware of their needs, work through the implications. It's kind of like the spin selling process. You're learning what they need, you're making them aware of what they need, and then you're trying to drive that forward to let them know how important it is that they fill that need. And then you show how their needs can be solved or satisfied by your product. It's intimidating to do this because it takes a long time, but for really complex, expensive products, this is going to be really useful because there's a lot of decision making, there's a lot of internal processing that goes through on behalf of customers, so it's a good idea to use this when you have a complex product. You're able to work with them, help them figure out how to find a problem and to solve it. Not quite the same as the problem solution approach. This is more you provide one product or one customizable product, and you're not acting as a consultant, you're just learning about your customer and trying to fulfill their needs. This works well for expensive products that have moderate risk. You wouldn't want to do this with something that has no risk or that's cheap, because obviously you don't need this much in-depth work. This takes a long time. This might take a couple of visits, at least one long visit to get to the bottom of it. This works well for customers who are intuitors. They're going to want somebody to walk through all the process so they can sort of reason through it all. I have another script here. I'm not going to walk through it again, but you can see that this is a back and forth entirely. You're trying to figure out what the customer's need is, you're trying to figure out their situation, and then you're going to provide a product that satisfies those needs. The advantages of this, it's very engaging, it's very customizable and flexible. You're incorporating everything your customer says into your presentation. So you show them that you really care about them, you really care about their issue, and you want to solve their specific, you want to fill their specific needs. The disadvantages, again, takes a lot of time. So you have to have a buyer that's ready to jump in with you and spend a lot of time on this. This is a very involved process. It requires strong sales skills. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do this if you're a new salesperson, and it requires you to give up a lot of control. You need to know your product extraordinarily well to be able to use this approach. So this is for expert salespeople, regardless of what type of strategy you're using. You don't have to use an expert sales strategy to do this. You could use this with any. The last one we're going to talk about is the problem solution sales presentation. This is going to require sort of a more consulting style approach. You're going to work directly with your customer to identify problems that they have. They might not know they have them. and you're going to see if you can find a way to incorporate your product into solving that problem for them. So this is similar to the need satisfaction, except need satisfaction, you're not getting deep into their business. You're trying to figure out whether or not they have a need for your product. This is more you're looking to sell something that maybe is very customizable, and you're trying to find a way that they can use your product to solve a problem that you've identified for them. So what do you need to do this? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to gain access to their business. Then you need to collect data from within their business on your own. You need to analyze that data to identify any problems that they're having, present that to them. So this could take weeks. You need to get them to let you in the door to look at their business processes, see if you can identify problems that they're having, whether or not they know they're there, and then you're going to analyze it, present it to them, and outline a plan. The final presentation, based on all of this, might be a formula presentation, or it might be a need satisfaction presentation. But the whole thing altogether, you're trying to find a problem as a consultant and solve it for them. This method is fully unstructured. It would be very hard to put together a nice little script for this one, but it works best for complex and customizable products. Oh, sorry, I jumped the wrong place. That require an extensive decision-making process. When there's substantial risk, this is where you want to really investigate their business and make sure that they're making the right choice with them. Works well, again, for intuitors and also perceivers. Very useful sales presentation method. Some of the advantages are that it's fully customized. That could also be seen as a disadvantage because it takes a long time. Something that's all adapted. There's legitimate problem solution for customers. You're going through, they can see the process that you've gone through, they can see the analysis you've done, and you're making a decision based specifically on them, so it's very customer driven. This is for building a relationship. You wouldn't want to do this for a customer that's only going to give you a little bit of money, because this is very time consuming. Again, very time consuming. It's significant risk to the salespeople. If you spend a lot of time identifying a problem, doing all your consulting work, doing all your investigation, and then they decide they don't want to buy from you, or that they just wanted somebody to go in and identify the problem so they go another route or solve it internally, that poses a big risk to salespeople. You want to make sure that you have some kind of commitment up front, and it's difficult. This is not something that everyone can do. So those are really the four main sales presentation methods, and I think we'll come back next time and talk about some key elements of the presentation.